Dopamine swipe, dopamine swipe. Followers, likes, double tap. Now they control your life.
What is going on, beautiful people? Welcome back to the 817 podcast, where we talk about the lovely city of Fort Worth, Texas. We get into news, politics, culture, business development, and we talk about the future design of Fort Worth, Texas. I'm here with my co-host, Ann Zeta. How are you today?
I am doing very well today. We are recording a little bit later in the day than normal because I had a gathering with a group of women I've been doing some work with lately, and we did a sound bowl meditation.
Oh, come on now.
Yeah, so I came in here all blissed out, and then we started reading all these news articles, and my bliss is slowly ebbing away.
Yeah. No, we have a lot to cover today. This is very an exciting episode in the sense of the proposed city budget was out, so we're going to be able to go through that as our big story. For anyone who randomly came across this pod, how this works is we do 3 short stories, 1 big story, and then wins and losses for the city of Fort Worth, or the county, or the state of Texas sometimes as well. So let's go ahead and dive into the first story.
So our first short story is a Fort Worth Star-Telegram article. As talks about Dallas-Houston high-speed rail resurface, what about a Fort Worth line? A top North Texas transportation official has hopes for high-speed rail connecting Fort Worth and Dallas, perhaps even before the much-discussed line between Houston and Dallas. I think we talked earlier about the conversation happening between Texas Central and Amtrak. There was an article that talked about how they are talking about a potential partnership to advance high-speed rail that could mean a trip from Dallas to Houston in less than 90 minutes, which sounds amazing. A trip 90 minutes and not on a highway. So that conversation is going on, but this brought up something that the North Texas Central Council of Governments wanted to look at the potential line to Fort Worth, because that is something that Fort Worth has been talking about for many years. The entire time that I was serving on the Regional Transportation Council, as soon as they started talking about high-speed rail between Houston and Dallas, there's great interest in making sure that there's kind of a one-stop, one-seat ride is what they call it, so you don't have to transfer, and that the hope would be that that would continue from Dallas to Fort Worth. So they brought this up and there's some other proposed stations along there, but the potential including Fort Worth in the planned route and its positioning station in Fort Worth, Arlington, and Dallas, in addition to this Houston to Dallas line. So the Dallas-Fort Worth is leading the nation in population growth, and Tarrant County is growing faster than Dallas County, not to mention the fact that we have more available land, so we could surpass Dallas in size. But the question would be, why would we want to end the line in Dallas County when you would then have to transfer to the TRE, not making it a one-seat ride, or get on some other mode of transportation? So Michael Morris, who's the director of transportation for the council, has suggested that we take a look at looking at the Fort Worth project, maybe even ahead of the Houston to Dallas project. Maybe a proof of concept, a ability for people to not have to go to Japan to experience high-speed rail. You could have that line between Dallas and Fort Worth up and running, and then work on that connection to Houston.
Yeah, no, I don't know Michael Morris, but I feel like he's one of my favorite people already. I just kind of like him. I don't know him, but
anybody touting public transportation.
But then also including us, Tarrant County, and like seeing the scope of the Metroplex and how, I think when we talked with Trinity Metro CEO last week, right, when we were talking about the complexities of the whole Metroplex being bought into transit and rail and all the other things we need to get around this big state. So I think that's great. And like you said, it gives them us as people to see a vision and get the idea of how this can work so that we can see more advocates. It's once you try it, see it in real time, this gives you that test run. We were laughing the other day about, not the other day, like 5 minutes ago, though, how self-driving taxis try to do a test run and it didn't work out too hot in the city of San Francisco. But this would go smoother because
it's proven technology in other places, but we just don't have to go to Japan to check it out. I have friends that have gone to Japan to see high-speed rail. It would be nice to have some to right here in the Metroplex.
I'm going to be in Tokyo for a week in January.
So are you going to take high-speed rail?
Yeah.
I think Manya Shore, who was the library director for the city of Fort Worth, is living in Japan right now. And she posted some things online about a trip and said that they were going like 250 miles per hour.
Yeah.
And somebody asked her, what does that feel like? And she said, it feels like nothing. Like you are standing up, you look out the window and it's just a blur, but it literally feels like nothing.
It's just crazy how this technology already exists. And if you talk to an average Texan, it would sound like Star Trek to them. It's like, no, people are actually doing this already. This Houston idea is not crazy. It's actually happening already. We're just not allocating and funding and seeing it possible. But that's just wild to me to go 250 miles on a train. That'd be wild. Yes. So no, good story to see what happens. I mean, when you look at the Dallas Morning News, the Houston Chronicle, this story was about, Dallas, Houston. But, now that we're also saying, whoa, maybe the best step is to integrate Fort Worth, that'd be big for all of us.
I mean, we have TRE between Dallas and Fort Worth right now, and that's a partnership between Trinity Metro and DART. It's been around for a while, and I know that they've been talking about revamping and updating those trains. And so I think if this may be in place of that, you don't really need a slow train and a fast train on the same route. So maybe it's something they need to start talking about before they start doing any improvements to the existing TRE.
I love it. All right, well, let's go into the second short story. The second short story is more transportation, but now we're talking about the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. It's getting closer to its 2030 goal of achieving net zero carbon emissions. U.S. Reps Bette Van Dyne and Colin Allred at top airport officials broke ground August 9th on a new utility plan that will use electricity from 100% renewable sources to provide heating and cooling for the airport. Now, you had both reps there because this was a big price tag. The $234 million plant is expected to provide additional capacity for future airport growth, substantially decrease greenhouse gas emissions, improve local air quality, and lower the plant's water usage by 29% compared to the current system, according to the media release. The plant will be located between Terminal A and Terminal B, and the plan to be open by mid-2025. Looking at this story, what caught your attention as, environmentalists? This is good for us?
Yeah, I think it's great. They said, this is a bipartisan effort that's been funded substantially by the federal government, and they had both, like you said, Allred and Van Dyne there to celebrate it, and this is a win for each of them, bringing this funding back to the Metroplex. It came out of $107 million from the Federal Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act. So both of them are touting that as being a win for the region. There was something that they were speaking about. They were talking about how there's improvements going on at the airport. And so they wanted to make sure that this would cover the expansion of another terminal, and that they're doing some reconstruction of a major runway that's going to be underway in the next few weeks. And they're looking to recycle 100% of the concrete when they reconstruct that runway. The plant will improve air quality in the Metroplex, which is greatly needed. I'm sure that a lot of people know that we are a non-attainment for air quality, so it's important that we be doing things to move the needle to improve that. There was one mention where it said that they were going to be working on, here it is. By the end of the decade, Donahue said the airport will work an overall electrification of the airport by potentially adding vehicles like electric vehicle takeoff and landing aircraft, which are similar but quieter than helicopters and produce zero emissions. The airport plans to reconstruct one of its major runways, which I already mentioned. Yeah. I know there was one section in here they were talking about reconfiguring some things and improving some things. And what I hope they're also going to be improving is the circulators outside of security, so that when you arrive at the airport on TexRail, if you need to get to another terminal and you need to check luggage when you come back, if you have to go out of security to get your luggage, then you are stuck taking terminal links versus Skylink. Yeah. Skylink inside the security, very smooth, way better, all in air conditioning. And terminal links are the little rattly buses outside of security, which are not near as pleasant.
And sometimes you jump on the employee one and you don't want to do that because then you end up,
someplace where you're not meaning to be.
Yeah. And, what's interesting is we always talk about like how we're growing faster than Dallas County and that one day Tarrant County will be bigger. I wonder if there's that same math for us becoming the world's busiest airport. And I know we're always under Atlanta, but it just seems infrastructure-wise, the size of DFW is growing. I mean, a Terminal F. I mean, we're really getting down the lettering group here. I mean, could one day our airport system be what Tokyo's public trans system is to, public trans with a subway and rail? Can we be that for flying? It's like, I mean, I just look at the map of how big DFW Airport is and what a crucial piece it plays to the country, and just getting things to places and people to places. I'm interested to know what more of that, what their vision is are we on path to just really become the number one airport in the world? I wonder who can compete just due simply to size and space that we have, to build something so robust.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but next week at Rotary, which I'm going to have to miss because I'm going to be visiting my parents in California.
Oh yeah, by the way, we are not having a pod next week because
There
you're
you go.
visiting your parents. I'm visiting my parents. Look at us being
We're
good.
such great kids.
I know.
But next Friday at Rotary, Sean Donahue from the airport is going to be visiting with the downtown Fort Worth Rotary. And we also know Joel Burns, who was the former council member to District 9, and he has just been appointed by the mayor and Fort Worth City Council to be one of the representatives on the airport board. So we've got some airport contacts. We could probably find out some answers about their long-range plans.
Absolutely. And I know you've been dying to make a list of people we can have on the pod, so we need to also make our hit list of people we want to get into the hot seat.
Now you're probably going to have a whole bunch of people calling us and asking to be on the pod.
Darn it. That happens. Cool. Well, let's go ahead and move into the third story.
So the third story is a record $2.5 billion in development planned in downtown Fort Worth. So just this past week, Downtown Fort Worth Inc. had a informal open house where they invited anybody who was interested to come and learn about 3 major projects that are taking off in downtown Fort Worth. That is the improvement and expansion to the Fort Worth Convention Center, the Texas A&M new building that's being built, and I think there's 2 more buildings to come after that. So Texas A&M expansion. And the Omni Hotel, which is planning a second tower. And in addition to the improvements to the convention center, some of those improvements include the straightening out of Commerce Street, which now kind of bulbs out. And that opens up a whole nother block of developable land, which I believe another convention center hotel will eventually be located on.
Interesting.
But they estimate in this article, with an estimated $2.5 billion in development in the pipeline, downtown Fort Worth is set to begin a new period of construction that will reshape the area for the next decade. It represents a historic record of downtown development, according to Andy Taft, the president of Downtown Fort Worth, Inc., the advocacy organization for the area. They met with Texas A&M University Convention Center project and held a meeting on August 9th, which I attended, where they discussed all of these improvements and allowed people to ask questions about them as well.
Yeah. Again, there's a lot going on around touting just the Fort Worth success, and this is clearly seeing like we have our strategic anchors, right? We have Texas A&M, we have the Convention Center. To me, it wasn't too much of new business, or what that new business would look like. I mean, I'm just interested to see, I eventually, when's the new businesses moving into downtown to complement the new apartments, to complement the new convention center, to complement the higher education institution. There needs to be the Goldman Sachs moving to Dallas, Charles Schwab moved to Alliance. Like I think I feel like that. I know the downtown people are really excited about our development, but I think like when you look at us compared to an Atlanta or an Austin, in Austin's prime at this time when they were going through it, is how do you get the new company to show up downtown?
There's definitely a lot of hospitality and residential, and that's but they expect this to trigger some more economic activity. The convention center itself will do upgrades that will not change the convention center facility, but will not only change the convention center facility, but straighten out Commerce Street, as I said. It currently has this weird curve in it. And also it's like the backside of the convention center with all the back of house. And they're doing this improvement in a way that allows them to continue to host conventions. So they're going to rebuild a kitchen and then tear out and then, do everything in this phased. And they showed videos to show how that's going to come about. Then phase 1 of the convention center construction will occur this month to December of 2024, with phase 1B taking place from June of 2024 to March of 2026. And the timeline for phase 2 has not been established yet. And phase 2 is what's going to change what happens in kind of the spaceship dome portion of the convention center, but that hasn't been designed yet. I think there were a few people there that were interested in there's been a lot of news about Texas A&M and those plans, so there was quite a bit of discussion about that. But then the Omni hasn't really released any design yet of what they're doing. I think some of the questions that they received were not tenants, but condo owners in the Omni Hotel now, because there's condos on the top of the Omni. So their big question was, how tall is the second tower going to be? Because I think they're a little concerned about their view in the current tower, but it's not going to be up to the height of where the residences start in the Omni. So and then that'll open up to Lancaster. So that's really great because they'll have probably a new restaurant, I think is what's proposed. But all of that development along Lancaster that's still kind of coming back to life. And then the stuff on the A&M side, this is a whole section of downtown that just hasn't had a whole lot.
It's going to look crazy.
Yeah, it's going to be so much more active and more people and more eyes on the street and all that. So I think it'll be a definite improvement to that part of downtown. Of course, parking came up. That was a question that always, when you're taking away surface parking lots, people want to know, where is everybody going to park? Yeah. But for those who are concerned about parking in the urban core of the city, right next to a transit station, which unfortunately nobody brought up the fact that there are other ways to get into downtown and around downtown, there will be a new 450 space parking garage that will be a part of it as well. Yeah.
Well, I'm knowing that a lot of our short stories today was really around development, growth, and different things that the city is continuing to say that it's building. But let's go ahead and move into the new city budget, which was just proposed by David Cook and his team. So let's go ahead and dive into that.
All right. So we have a couple of articles on the city budget. The first one is in the Star-Telegram. It is Fort Worth hopes to use property tax funds for police and roads. The Fort Worth City Manager's Office is proposing hiring nearly 200 more police and fire personnel and putting some money towards fixing streets. They unveiled the budget. They want to, and the tax rate, which is what the city is under the city's control. They're proposing a tax rate of 67.25 cents per $100 of value. And they calculate out in the article about what that means to the tax bill. They're going to lower the city's tax rate by 4 cents, which is the largest decrease since 2002, according to the data on the city's website. They have lowered the tax rate every single year, I think for the last 10 or 12 years. Mm-hmm. But this is the largest in one fell swoop. But the funds are needed to build on the city's progress for reducing crime while improving city services. And I always tell the story, when I was in office, I never let my husband protest our taxes because that's the budget for the city and you're constantly being asked to provide things. And when you're lessening the amount of the budget, it's harder to provide those things. Yeah. But he's free to protest his taxes now.
My big part is just, I think this is like a safe spot for me to say this is an EJ opinion on, I just feel like David Cook and the strategy we take is like there's probably in JCPenney somewhere an 80-year-old executive still making decisions in the glory days of JCPenney and think they're living in the reality of how to survive today. And just this obsession with 200 more police and fire personnel and the obsession of wanting to increase that budget and saying, we weirdly, not just locally, but nationally, Fort Worth is positioning itself as we know how to grow a big city and not do the things that happen to blue cities like San Francisco. And I think you're seeing that in our national language on the news. And you're also seeing that now in how we talk about our local city budget. And I think I just think to see the new guy, what's his name, Lausdorff, say that he even thinks we should even do more than that, is a part that I think is just a continual loss on the language here. And then it also, as you see that, that was also shared in other places as well. I'll also say District 10, Alan Blaylock's idea of no new revenue tax rate. So now you're trying to say you're growing like a big city, but then you don't want to even generate new revenue or increase revenue to improve on this growing city. Those are two big losses.
There's definitely need because we are not keeping up with the things that we need to keep up with. And so to cut back, even to me, sometimes seems a little bit like they shouldn't even. 4 cents is a lot. Yeah. And there's been years past when they've talked about maybe putting more money towards public transportation, putting more money towards the arts, putting more money towards, homelessness and affordable housing and all of those types of things. And so if we're not able to keep up with the things that we're funding now, the repairs to our streets, I've noticed a whole lot of striping going on though recently. I think they did make a change in the frequency to which they are restriping to actually kind of get closer to the actual lifetime that the paint is able to last. And because in the past they've given presentations that basically say we restripe every 8 years and the paint is only holds up for 5. So you're going to end up with a lot of streets that have faded paint when you're not doing it on a schedule that matches how long the paint can last.
And it's just to me though, it's just when your district, Allen represents District 10, and District 10 doesn't have a safety issue. They have an infrastructure issue, right? They're these suburban blocks that don't have enough roads or stoplights and organization. When you're touting no more infrastructure growth or development, you're literally hurting your own area of people who needs more infrastructure to get connected to the overall city.
Yeah, I think they talk about adding libraries outside the loop.
Yeah, District 7.
Places where there haven't been those, because that's usually what happens in fast, rapid growing areas where lots of rooftops go up, but then there's, lagging in community centers and police and fire stations and the infrastructure to get connected between all of those things as well. So the second article is a Fort Worth Report article, which also touts more police. An investment in city infrastructure is the headline for the proposed budget. And it says that they would add Fort Worth proposed budget for fiscal year 2024 will add an additional 294 new staff positions and lower the tax rate by 4 cents, which was mentioned in the other article. I think last year they lowered the tax rate by 2 cents, and several council members felt that decrease didn't go far enough. But council members learned the details of the budget just this week on August 8th and had some questions about what was being proposed. Councilmember Flores, who represents neighborhoods north of downtown, asked if the city could invest more in replacing cast iron pipes, which are more susceptible to bursting during extreme weather. And I know that there's an increase in water fees, so I think that will go towards that as well.
Yeah, and you also talked about, is that time not, did you feel like that wasn't enough time for them to be aware of this? You said, when we were looking at when they were.
So I'm not sure when they received their budget binder. From past experience with getting those binders, we received a very large budget binder that talked about every single department and every single portion of the budget ahead of a presentation that's given at the work session. And I'm not sure when they received their binder budget, but I think there was some questions about some information that was released to the media ahead of the work session that described a new department under code. So there's code as it exists now, and they're planning a new environmental department, which as an environmental studies major and a tree hugger, I think this is a fabulous addition. So I think a couple people just had some questions about that because they hadn't gotten a briefing from the city manager's office ahead of time about what this new department would be. And I think it's kind of a separating of code and environmental services. And we have some people in the environmental department that are very focused on, water quality, air quality, and that sort of thing. And I think that with a new department over that specifically, we will end up with a little more intentionality around that, and as a rapidly growing city. So the 2024 budget also includes a new department, Environmental Services. The new department will include solid waste, health, and environmental quality. And Environmental Services will be tasked with managing solid waste pickup and drop off, along with air and water quality, litter, environmental investigations, and industrial compliance with city environmental policies. Those units previously worked under just code compliance department. So I think having those two separate gives a little more intentionality, as I mentioned, with environmental issues in the city.
Now, this you mentioned that there was some drama around this department being created, like maybe in the past, and you were concerned that. Let me know. Is this the same thing we were talking about, where I guess David Cook brought this into the budget, but there wasn't enough announcements to it?
Yeah, I mean, this is the item that was in the budget, was in a document that was released to the press and was embargoed for them to talk about it until after the work session. But several council members brought up that they were concerned that information was given to people besides the council. Mm-hmm. And so maybe there wasn't the necessary communication from the city manager's office about the creation of this new department. Yeah. I think for the most part, things that are put into the budget are things that have been discussed at some point or another during the year. There are things that the council brings to the attention of the city manager. There are things that different departments bring to the attention of the city manager. So I'm not sure where this came from. It's something that we've been talking about for a long time. Those of us who would like to see the city do a better job addressing environmental issues, encouraging people to do better and be better stewards of the environment. It's something we've been asking for a long time. So I don't think anybody's opposed to it. I think they were just concerned with who was communicated with about it first.
And now also with the Fort Worth Lab, which is the city's new transformed data and analytic department,
right.
It seems like 13 additional staff piece.
So in looking at this, this is kind of a rebranding of a pre-existing department. So there was a department called Planning and Data Analytics, which covered planning and talked about budget somewhat. But this new Fort Worth Lab is very specifically connecting planning to budget. And while it says 13 new additional staff, I think some of this staff is coming from budget and some of this staff is coming from the previous planning and data analytics. Because when you look at the graph in the article where it shows Fort Worth Lab 13, that didn't exist before, but planning and data analytics is not listed here at all. So I think all of the staff, or the majority of the staff that were in planning and data analytics, are now in this Fort Worth Lab department. So it's not 13 new, it's just kind of a rebranding of a department that existed before. But it has been created to have a more data-driven approach to budgeting and bond programs, which are done every 4 years, but looking at long-range planning and making sure that those plans have budget tied to them so that you don't just make plans and put them on a shelf. So I think it could be a good thing.
Got it. And then we brought up in one of our short stories, or maybe that was a lost I had, was around the MedStar situation. And we seem to believe like there's more to that story. There's a budget line for MedStar here.
Yeah, in the past, I don't think MedStar has received funding from the city. It's been kind of its own entity. It has its own board, but recently they approached the city to help fund.
MedStar is a for-profit organization. Based off the last article I remember us talking about, and them not being able to sustain their organization.
They did come to the city for some funding. Yeah. I don't know exactly, and I know that they hadn't gotten funding in the past. Yeah. And so I think that there may be some conversation about what MedStar, who will do ambulance services going forward. When you call 911, the first people that usually show up is the fire department. Mm-hmm. And there's people on the fire department that do some checking out of people. It's not full on paramedics. But when I had my crash in April, I guess it was the fire department that came and checked me out first. And then the ambulance did come second, and I'd already been checked out by the fire department, so I was fine. And then the police showed up after that. So those are all the people that kind of respond to 911.
Yeah.
So I think they're having they're looking into what MedStar staffing and funding and all of that will be. I think they're actually doing a third-party vendor is gathering recommendations for future financial options. And the Fort Worth Report did previously report on that and said that MedStar had put in a request for $1.5 million per quarter in the next year. So that's something that they're still sorting out, it appears. But all of this to be said, I mean, there is also a section on something that I think is really important, and that is housing and homelessness. The city's going to increase its staffing to the HOPE team, which is under the police department. And those are folks that reach out to homeless residents in Fort Worth and connect them with resources and deal with camping sites and things like that. So the 3 police officer and 1 sergeant will join that team in 2024. And that increase is part of the overall 11% increase of the city's crime control and prevention district fund.
Yeah, and I'm going to take a quick right here for everyone to just kind of add in a little bit of sprinkle and storytelling to my comment around how the city budget feels to also fit the national language. There was a Bloomberg article about America's fastest growing city embracing Yellowstone mania. And it was just pretty much a entire propaganda piece of, how Fort Worth is doing it better than the blue cities of growing a city. And we'll just link it in the description so you could read it. It's definitely made for the old conservative Republican CEO of a business eating at a Del Frisco's who has a Bloomberg subscription, and they probably live in a blue state and they're trying to get them to move to Fort Worth. It's a crazy sell pitch and not the narrative. If I, as a Fort Worthian, I would want to tell people outside of what we sell. But it was just talking about how safe we are and all that. But let's all be clear that, we're already down 100 plus positions in police, yet we want to spend more money doing it. We also are saying that we're safer and that it's working that we spend on this money. Yet the California city that we always make fun of, San Francisco, has a 6.9 to 100,000 people homicide rate, where Fort Worth, has 11. So all of this, to me, the big L of all of this is that we are touting a vision that Fort Worth is growing and doing good, but it's in the eyes of trying to get, just red conservative business leaders to bite the bullet to where they are, when really that's another part of this story. The population growth in Fort Worth isn't California's moving to Texas. It's Texas moving to Texas. And it's the suburbs of Texas, of Fort Worth is bigger than the inner loop right now. I remember Kyle coming on, the population professor, geography professor at TCU. So it's just to me, we're sticking to a agenda rather than innovating and being more creative on how we lead, as we do have a big potential to get out in front of telling a different story for a Texas city that sure holds on to its Texas roots, but also can do a lot more. So, around infrastructure for neighborhoods, connecting with transit, those kind of things that I don't see really could be much more safer and valuable without calling it cops and crime and things like that. Access, enable, services, intentionality, those kind of things that...
Mobility.
Mobility, there's the great word. Yeah. So, and all wrapping this big story piece up, I just think that's kind of where, as we move into wins and losses, we start with losses. I'll start that's my tone into our losses. But yeah, so what is your...
I do want to say one more thing about the budget, because in the article it has what is Fort Worth's budget schedule. And so this is a bit of a call to action. So the city council will be meeting on the budget work session August 10th, 24th, and September 7th. And 8th, a budget discussion with the city manager is scheduled August 16th at City Hall. A public hearing on the budget will be held on September 12th. A public hearing on tax revenue will be held on September 19th. The city is also finalizing a schedule of district-specific community meetings to discuss the budget, and City Council will pass the final budget before the start of the next fiscal year, which is on October 1st. And the city does, I think, have a pretty robust page on the city's website that has all of the budget information, and will, if it doesn't already, have kind of where those meetings are occurring and how you can give input and feedback on that budget itself, because these are the kind of things that are important for you to speak up about if the budget reflects what you think the budget should reflect or not.
This is a good call, and I am going to look for that link and put it into the show notes.
Perfect.
Awesome. Let's move to wins and losses.
So I actually have a loss this week that is truly a loss,
you had one last
in my
week, too.
opinion. Oh,
that was a good one, too. You're on fire.
There you go.
Look at you.
I'm getting more negative as we speak. There was a Star Telegram article talking about over 100 books in Fort Worth school libraries are being challenged. A debate over whether books should be available in Fort Worth school libraries has intensified in the last couple of months. The latest complaint to the district alleges that there's more than 100 inappropriate books, in their opinion, for middle school and high school shelves. I will just say that it is my understanding that Fort Worth ISD has a robust policy in place that allows individual parents to dictate books that they don't want their children to have access to. And that process is perfectly fine for individual parents to determine taking something away from their child's purview. But I don't believe that these parents should have the right to be telling everybody else what books shouldn't be available to their children. And I have had a long relationship with librarians my entire life. As a child, I went to a library weekly, the public library in my town. I had my own librarian. Her name was Valerie. And she would put aside books for me that she knew fell into the wheelhouse of the topics that I was interested in. At the time, I went through a phase of being really interested in Hitler and the war. And, you know, she put books aside that were appropriate, children's books about children that were living through that, you know, Diary of Anne Frank. Mm-hmm. There was a book called What Happened to Pink Rabbit, which was about a child that had to flee quickly and left behind a beloved stuffed animal and then regretted it. Yeah. And, you know, I have a great deal of respect for people who study and learn about library services, and teachers especially who are experts at what is appropriate material for the children that are in their care at schools. And so I believe that I would rather have those people making decisions about what books are available in the libraries for children to have access to.
Yeah, as someone who works in the education space, the amount of times the biggest thing that I think kids have a challenge with is actually their parents. And so it's, you know, I think a part of being a parent is having to have the autonomy and freedom to create an environment to allow your kids to be trusted by other adults. You know, you wouldn't say this with medical. If this was surgery, you wouldn't say a parent knows best for, you know, what's the best approach there. Librarians are professionals. Educators are professionals. We got to start treating them like that, and not creating the reality for our children. But I was surprised you weren't reading already, like city budgets at 10. I thought that's what you were going to say. She would print the city budget for you, your librarian, and you were already at 10 years old reading
No.
the budget.
I hadn't quite gotten as nerdy into the city planning stuff as an elementary school student.
Right. But yeah, no. So my loss kind of goes down the same thing, in a different light of pushing your thumb on things that you shouldn't. But the Justice of the Peace, Kenneth Sanders, was hospitalized unexpectedly at the end of July with complications from kidney disease. He gave Tarrant County a call to make his administration aware. Sanders is a Democrat, and he recommended Vicki Gray to fill his place while he was gone. Gray is a retired justice who Sanders said had a good rapport with his staff and was going to take over for him when he was supposed to be on vacation that next week. County Judge Tim O'Hare instead brought in Republican Matt Hayes, who lost 2 bids against Sanders to represent Precinct 7 as Justice of the Peace. The loss here is the person who won the election is ill currently and has a staff and rapport and represents constituents and has a plan in place for the situation that this person is in and recommends a aligned colleague who has experience in this position to then take in to say, hey, you can come help me with this process. And Tim O'Hare actually said, no, I'm pitting in my guy, Matt Hayes, who lost to you, a Republican. The rules around all of this is very like, they're trying to figure out what's the code that allows Hare to appoint someone to fill any justice of the peace position while they're sick. But it's just, to me, a big loss because it's just showing you the bulliness and just lack of respect of continuity of being a purple county. He has no indication of representing that, and he's more interested on making this as red as possible. And I think that is my big loss on this.
So my win does circle back to an article that we did talk about in great detail, and that is just this suggestion by Michael Morris from the North Central Texas Council of Governments to have Texas Central and Amtrak take a look at putting high-speed rail between Dallas and Fort Worth, like within, looking at it in the next year, starting very quickly. So I think anytime that there's actual proven transportation that we can bring to this community, the better it is. I think just recently I had somebody talking about all the roads that were congested and needing to widen roads. And I was sharing with them, the little video meme of the highway in Houston that's like 20 lanes wide. And there's this voice chanting in the background, just one more lane will take care of congestion, just one more lane. And then at the very end, it says, you know what really helps take care of congestion? Trains.
Yeah, no, it's I have been enjoying that part. A reason why you being a part of the podcast has been fun because Jimmy was also really big in the transportation piece. He was kind of like that person who would talk about the topic. So I feel like we now make sure the topic stays true
Front
to the
and
pod.
center.
And me just learning from you this whole time has also been just the importance of it. So really cool. And Michael Morris, if you ever need another friend, I'm happy to, get a drink with you or something. I have no idea where you live or how this works. But anyone looking out for Fort Worth and the greater good of the Metroplex and not making this a Dallas, Fort Worth, Dallas, Houston, us against each other thing is always a win and being a leader. So that's also a win. All right, beautiful people. We had this one nice and short. We stayed under 50 minutes for you today. So we're going to be gone next week as well. So now you can catch up as well. Last week, we talked to Rich, who was the CEO of Trinity Metro. He was really great. I mean, you're talking about a guy who ran a $1 billion budget public transportation budget for Connecticut. He's here now in Texas having this dialogue. So if you're into this, definitely got to see that one. And we'll continue to ride. We're going to be off next week, but then we'll be coming back the following week.
We'll see you then.